We're back. This is Hockey on Tap podcast. Here with Billy Dean. I am your host, Sam Wu. Producer Sam is filling in because the guys are on the phone right now because the NHL is coming back. Gary Bettman made his announcement at 4:30 p.m. Eastern today. Bill, you've got your bullet points. I've got a lot of questions about these conditional picks, but why don't we just welcome Schwim and Little Steve, who are normally the hosts of this fine podcast. Schwim and Steve, you're on with Sam and Bill. How are you?
Sam, it's good to see you. I'm glad we actually get to see your face this time. I am grateful, however, that I don't have to see Dean's face or sit next to Schwim right now because the stench that was emanating to my right last podcast was a little bit, I kind of need a break.
My sentiments exactly. Actually, at this point, I think I'd rather see Bill Dean's face than sit next to Steven.
Yes. You're so nice to me. I appreciate it. Well, Sam, as you guys know, we're coming on for this. Yeah, as you know, we're coming on this emergency podcast. The NHL, as Gary Bettman says, is coming back. They're going to have that 2014 playoff, like we discussed on the podcast yesterday. For those that didn't get to see it here, go back to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and go check it out. But like we said, 2014 playoff. The top 12 teams in each conference by points percentage will be making it into the playoffs. From that, they're going to do a 16-team qualification bracket, which will be a best of 5. We discussed those matchups yesterday. We won't get too much into them today, but there will also be a round robin for those top 4 teams in each conference, and they will they'll play just a little, I guess, friendly, if you wish, for who gets that first seed. Another thing about this that Bettman discussed was each conference gets a host city. So they'll have secure arenas, practice facilities, hotels, and transport, which is obviously the biggest thing. One thing just quickly to discuss, Bettman did say this is still an if. Obviously, COVID is still an issue. They're still going through a lot of things. So, health permitting and safety permitting, the Stanley Cup playoffs will come back. And, it's exciting news. We're happy as hockey fans to hear this kind of thing. Sam, I know, you were asking, you had some questions, but the three of us have been kind of in tune with it. Crack away.
Well, you know what? I don't think there are any clear-cut winners here because the one thing I'm interested in, of course, it's obviously with contracts and also these trade deals that were made before the deadline. The key word conditional. How does this all work out with these teams? Now, what the NHL did, I thought was the best that they could. You have 16 teams that normally would make the playoffs, and then you have teams on the bubble. These 5 game series, am I correct, Bill? 5 game series to start the teams on the bubbles. I think that was a great idea. I think that was an excellent idea. Tell us a little bit more about that, Bill. Like how does that work? I think that's probably the most fair thing that they could have come up with.
So yeah, like we talked about yesterday, and I'll let Steve get in a little more of this, but that top 12 in each conference by points percentage. So that meant Boston, Tampa, and this is the East. Boston, Tampa, Washington, Philly would get the top 4 spots, and then there would be qualifying matches. And the way that they did in the bracket would be Pittsburgh versus Montreal, Carolina versus the Rangers, Islanders versus Florida, and Toronto versus Columbus. Steve, why don't you get into a little bit about what we talked about yesterday?
So, like you were saying, Sam, I think this is probably the best that they could have done. I think one major complaint is, and even some of the players, including Shea Weber, who is on the Montreal Canadiens, the 24th ranked out of 24 teams making these playoffs, said that it's not exactly fair. But also you had to have a certain number of teams in order to make this work. You want to give those bubble teams a chance. If you want to think Montreal's a bubble team, I mean, that's a long shot, but unfortunately, in order to make this work, you had to have X amount of teams per conference, but you also had to reward those teams that were just clearly in the playoffs. Those top 4 teams, I mean, they weren't going anywhere. They were clearly gonna finish in top of the league. So give them that free pass to the actual playoff situation and not this play-in situation. But yeah, I think it's as best as it could do. I kind of liked that round robin idea that they had, but I think with point percentage in the season versus point percentage in the round robin would have gotten way too confusing. So I think this is the most straightforward thing that they could have done. And also, in all likelihood, those teams that those bottom dwelling teams like Montreal, who probably shouldn't be there, probably won't move on. So you won't really have much argument for those teams that have no business in the playoffs really making a run for it. I don't think it'll happen again, like we were talking about yesterday. This is basically a brand new season, so you never know. But just looking on paper, teams are healthy, teams are rested. They should be focused. We'll see. It's going to be a different game, but.
Schwim, why don't you also discuss from that top 4 perspective?
Well, I was also going to say, I hope for Steven's sake that Montreal doesn't get a leg up on them in that qualifying round or whatever it is. But yeah, it would be. I mean, I would be upset. I'm not a Penguins fan. I'd be upset if they lost to basically I think actually they are a 500 team. But anyway, like getting into my team, Tampa, they're one of the teams that were afforded the bye. One of those first 4 teams. And I think they're like some of the other players have said that they're at a disadvantage. All these other teams are going to be playing meaningful, hockey games to get into the round of 16. And the top 4 teams are only going to be playing like a little mini tournament amongst themselves to determine their seeding. So I don't know. I don't think, to me, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to be as competitive as those other teams that are playing, the best of 5 series. Having said that, though, but this is the best they can do. I'm all for it. I'm all for hockey coming back in any capacity. So if this is what it's going to be, I'll have to deal with it and hopefully, hope for the best. And I can't wait to watch my first return to hockey game, hopefully soon, which they were saying, I think it's probably not going to start until at least August. When they announced today, saying with the training camp and all the other things, it's probably not going to get underway until August, which I'm okay with that too. Hopefully everything works out, that everything goes smoothly, and we can have hockey in the late summer going into the fall, I guess.
You know what's so cool about? You know what's so cool about this whole thing? When you think about hockey in the summer, you're thinking about June weather. You're thinking about shorts. They went basically straight to the playoffs. So it has that playoff feel for any teams, fans that been to the Stanley Cup Finals. You're in your T-shirt and then you're in your shorts. It's going to have that feel. In terms of player safety, I'm a little concerned about that. There's going to be no fans in the building. I think that's a good thing. I mean, this is a very unique situation. Let's ask Facebook Live, Twitter Periscope, Twitch, and YouTube Live. What do you guys think about this? Because I don't want to be sitting here complaining, because at the end of the day, guys, we got hockey back. There's a plan in place. Yeah, hockey is coming back. So, not everyone's going to get what they want. For me, as a Devils fan, I'm just, I worry about these conditional picks. Are the Devils going to get hosed? And this is the best they came up with. I'm okay with it. I'm actually okay with it, win or lose. I'm okay with it, because what else? I don't have any other ideas about it.
Yep. No. We'll talk about we'll talk about the draft lottery in a second. I just wanted to touch a couple quick points that Bettman had made in his playoff address. Each team would only have 50 personnel, and they'd have comprehensive testing. So obviously, player safety and just league safety is the most important thing. So they would do this in phases. That would be phase 1. They, develop this whole playoff scenario. Phase 2, early June, clubs would be able to return to their facilities within their respective states. Obviously, also health and safety and government approval. Phase 3 training camp by mid-July. Phase 4, they would have everybody start to go to those hub cities. So, he discussed hub cities being Chicago, Columbus, Dallas, Vegas, Edmonton, LA, Minnesota, St. Paul, Pittsburgh, Vancouver, and Toronto. So there's a lot of cities, and these are not small cities by any means. These are pretty, very large cities. They can hold NHL fans. It's also a little unnerving when they are the big cities. You could go to Arizona where there's a little more space, but that's neither here nor there. Obviously, they would go that round robin and those qualifying tournaments. He did discuss that the first and second rounds of the actual Stanley Cup playoffs could be 5 games, but he left it in between 5 and 7 game series. So that's maybe a little condensed schedule. And then obviously the Stanley Cup Finals and the conference finals would be 7-game series. Just quickly, one more quick thing on that. The full calendar year, he stated this, that he wants the full calendar year for 2021 season. So he doesn't want to start that 2021 season late. So that's obviously an interesting piece of news that, if this thing does drag out a little longer and there's no real end in sight to COVID and the restrictions, maybe, he did say if, and he prefaced that a bunch of times in his statements. So that was interesting. But Sam, you talked about the draft lottery. The 7 teams, the 7 clubs that did not make this qualifying tournament will get the top 7 percentages in that draft lottery. So that means Detroit, Ottawa, which has 2 picks at 2 and 3, the Kings, Anaheim, New Jersey, and Buffalo will all be the top 7 percentage play points. So 18.5 all the way to 6.5. And then the 8 teams that are eliminated in qualifying get those next 8 slots. So whoever loses in that qualifying tournament, say it's the Rangers or Pittsburgh or any one of those teams, they would fit into this. He labeled an A through H, and they have different percentages. And there's a whole shebang behind this that I'll let Steve get into a little bit. But your Devils, obviously a big question on them was what happens to the Vancouver pick, and obviously you want Vancouver to win, because that means that you'll get a pick this year in a loaded draft. Right out of 31 teams, it might be 16 to 31, but in a loaded draft, that's still a really good pick to have. Same thing with the Rangers. They're kind of ending up a little bit of winners here, because whoever loses out of Rangers and Carolina, they both have they have those 2 picks, so that's very nice. But
you got a drop call. You lost them.
Was it Schweb? Oh well.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't need them anyway.
Yeah, it's all right. But yeah, so like I said, that draft lottery is a big thing, and they're going to have it obviously before the start of the playoffs. So it's really interesting news. It's good stuff. We get to watch Rangers playoff hockey. We get to I'm looking at Facebook Live. Eric Leppert, if you make the playoffs, you shouldn't be in the lottery. Well, that's why they have this little qualifying round, so that those teams obviously aren't technically playoff teams for this scenario. So it's pretty good stuff. What do you think, Sam?
I can't complain. I really can't complain. I think there's a lot of effort. I mean, what fans need to know is there are a lot of moving parts. You're dealing with the NHL, the Players Union. You're dealing with a lot of money. You're dealing with a unique situation. You're dealing with player safety. You're dealing with having no fans watching. And I think really, if you think about it, Billy, this is the best Gary Bettman and Bill Daly and the NHLPA Donald Fear could do. They signed off on it. Let it be. You're not going to get everything. I know Shea Weber, made those comments about it, and you know what? He's probably right, but that's just the way it is. I mean, nobody asked for this. No. This is not about greed. This is not. I mean, what I don't want to see happen, where you're hearing stories from Major League Baseball, the players and prorating and this and that, and you deserve this. You know what? I don't want to see this sport, particularly because this is my favorite sport, along with you, Billy. Yep. That players are complaining about money and nickeling and diming, or the other way around, to be fair, owners nickeling and diming. This is a collaborative effort. People are suffering right now. There have been a lot of people that have passed on because of this virus. Okay? We don't need to be hearing anything about it. And it's great that the NHLPA and Donald Fear, you got to give him credit, Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, they put their egos aside. They put everything aside for the betterment of the sport. I'm seeing it right now. But please, I pray that the players are safe doing this. Because I would hate that it would be a really tragedy if something bad were to happen health-wise with this. And I hope the protocols in place that are approved by, the officials, the experts, so to speak, hopefully it works. That the players are safe, their families don't have to worry, the fans don't have to worry, and we can have a Stanley Cup awarded, where you couldn't do that in the last pandemic, major pandemic, back in 1918 or 1919, around that era.
Yep. No, I mean, we get hockey back, which is obviously enormous. We get to watch the game we all love, and we played, and we become fans, and we bleed, this kind of stuff, and it's all good stuff. AJ on Facebook Live says, "What do you think about the round robin for those 8 teams? They get a little bit of an advantage playing against each other, as compared to a bubble team playing just one team." Obviously, with that round robin team, and we discussed it yesterday on the pod, some teams aren't, they might sit their star for one game and then give them kind of 2 games as a tune-up. I don't think it'll be full. A lot of those guys that are fighting for those last spots will give that they're all. I think maybe it's more than obviously a scrimmage. It's a better version of a training camp game, but it's just to tune them up for a series, and I think that could be a good thing for them. Obviously, Boston playing Tampa, and if they could see them in the conference finals, that's a big deal. Same thing with Philly, Washington, and then you go on obviously the Western Coast. It's hockey's back, so that's depending on timelines and obviously everything being healthy and state mandated and allowing it. That's awesome. So you can't complain.
I know it sucks, but as a fan standpoint, you know what? It's better than nothing. It's on TV. A lot of us hockey fans, and we're looking at the Facebook Live right now. My friend Hardline Betty is trying to tag people and get people watching. Hockey fans are very internet savvy, if you think about it, into their social media, especially Twitter, right? Yep. On Twitter, the Twitterverse. This could be something new and something new on the horizon using new technologies. Possibly if the NHL starts using some of these video teleconferencing softwares, and maybe the fans could talk to the players, in intermission or whatever, or say their piece. Maybe they're going to get very creative with this. That it's not just going to the empty gym and just playing a pickup game.
And even with that, they're talking about pumping in crowd noise too, which is interesting dynamic, and also then just for the broadcast, pumping in crowd noise just for the broadcast itself, but actually in the arena having them pumping in crowds and cheering for when goals are scored, and that does get a player fired up a little bit. I know it's not genuine, it's not the real stuff, but it is an added dynamic that can get NHL players. First of all, it's the Stanley Cup Finals. You chop off your leg if you can get into it. So. And,
what? To tell you the truth, if I was in the NHL and this was my first game as a rookie, I take it. You take it any way you can. Also, on top of that, just think about this: NBC Sports. Basically, everybody is mic'd up because it's an empty arena. There's only so much you can, kind of squelch the volume. Mm-hmm. Everybody's mic'd up. I'm kind of interested to hear what's going to get picked up on the microphones.
Well, that's how I'm saying.
Players shouting at each other, the chat, all that stuff, the inner workings of the game. The hardcore hockey fans going to love it. Also, as the sport's going on, hockey's going on, we don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the leagues. I know the NBA is in talks with having it down in Orlando, Florida at Disney World, which I think is a great idea for that league. But I really think we should just enjoy it because they got something tentative going. And let's see if these protocols work, because this is the stepping stone of normalcy. It's not going to be normal for a while, but at the very least, we have some live content. We can start wagering from our phones because sports betting is legal in the United States now.
Yep.
I don't know what it's like in Canada. Great show. You guys know your stuff. Thank you, Dana. I really think, Billy, there's an opportunity here for the NHL, the NHLPA to do different things that they normally wouldn't have in a normal season. The other thing too, I have, because and if you wouldn't mind, I like to plug the Let's Go Devils podcast. It's
absolutely.
Let's Go Devils podcast. We have Phil Pritchard, the keeper of the cup, next Sunday, this upcoming Sunday coming. What I want to know is the protocol about handing the Stanley Cup. No kissing the cup? Or is there, it's passed around? You know what I mean? This is stuff that we're going to be asking, and I kind of want to know how that's going to go. The handshake, the traditional handshake. Are they going to do a traditional elbow bump? And also, this is also an opportunity for the players to speak to the fans through television or online that everything's going to be okay. Yeah, we're going to make these adjustments, but we're still in it together, And I think this is just an opportunity. Rivalries will always be there. Of course, I'm going to be booing certain teams, whatever, but that's just a little bit step closer to normalcy.
Lundqvist. There we go. 8-bit. Maybe he sees a game.
Now, you know what? You know what's going to happen, Billy? All right, this is a little like fan trash talk here, in the message boards, if people are still on it, or in the Facebook groups or whatever. The quote unquote asterisk, and could I just comment on this asterisk? I think the Houston Astros redefined the asterisk. Because an asterisk to me now, after that, hearing that Houston Astros and the Boston Red Sox, it's when all these teams are on the even footing going into the playoffs. And there was this whole thing in '95 with the half a cup with the Devils, and 2013 with the Chicago Blackhawks. There should be an asterisk. No, asterisk should be reserved for if somebody was cheating. That was above the game. Nobody's above the game here. No one's cheating. Nobody asked for a pandemic. So can we just stop it with the asterisk mark? I know I joke around with you, Billy, if the Rangers do win the cup, which kind of scares me because I saw somewhere that there's no evidence or study that younger players are going to benefit from this, but I'm kind of like, I don't know. We shall see. We don't know, which makes it exciting to me.
I was going to say there was a question about actually, having fans in the building, if it helps or hurts, but they actually mentioned young guys. Kevin posted this question, but for the young guys, I can think that this, first of all, they're coming in Stanley Cup playoffs. They're going to, go balls to the wall. They're going to do everything they can to try to win a game, block a shot, take a penalty, draw a penalty, they're going to do anything they can to win a game. So, I think crowd noise, whether, it is pumped in or isn't, they're going to be talking to each other. They're going to be, going at it. So I can't imagine this hurts any kind of young player or older player. It's good stuff. So, but Shrim also asked, if there was, because he's given us some, talking points, but, what's the plan if someone tests positive? And, that's obviously something that the NHL will discuss, and I'm sure they'll have some kind of a statement on that. But, I would think that it's like any normal sporting event. We've seen it, in the Bundesliga and obviously in Korean baseball, that, they do try to isolate those players. They'll make sure they go back and see where these players have been around. And, it's all stuff that we don't have answers to. That sucks, obviously, but it's all things that the NHL will go out throughout and give us answers for.
Yeah. Also on the Facebook Live, someone wrote, "It's not the same without the cat Cynthia." So, in honor of that, no, Cynthia, there is a cat. I just found a graphic.
There we go.
Yeah, there's a cat that's
just walking across the screen.
Yeah, just almost looks like a ghost. Okay, there you go, Cynthia. And by the way, we do things live here, so we're always off the cuff. Hockey on Tap podcast. I produce it. I'm usually the guy behind the scenes. Obviously, I got my other podcast, but I'd be happy to do this with you guys. Sorry that the Schwim and Little Steve hung up.
Yeah, they're actually they're posting on on Facebook Live. They're getting into it, so they're we're always here. We're always answering questions. So like we said on Monday's podcast, please reach out to us with any questions. We'll obviously discuss for next Monday for our podcast then. But we just wanted to get this out to you guys. Obviously, it's big news. NHL coming back. It's great stuff. Hockey's hopefully on the horizon, and we really are looking forward to it. So Sam, thank you very much. It's been it's good, and we'll get back onto it.
Oh, absolutely. Check us out at Tap Hockey on Twitter, Facebook,
Instagram.
Yeah.
Everything.
On the Primetime Radio Network. On the Primetime Radio Network. Like it all. Follow it, share it, tweet it. Hockey is back.
See you, Schwim.